Vernon, please tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, and what brought you into the world of student affairs.
Cool. Well, actually, as an undergrad at NC State, North Carolina State University in Raleigh, North Carolina, I actually started as a orientation counselor. I remember as a first year student going to student orientation. It was a summer program where it was an overnight program. I want to say it was about I think it was probably about 2 days. It was one overnight where groups of students will come in over the summer. And I remember going to orientation and I saw these pretty energetic students who were welcoming first year students. And I thought, you know what, that's something I want to do. And so after my first year, I applied to be an orientation counselor, and note back that basically said, thank you for your application, but only juniors and seniors can apply for orientation counselor, which I don't know how I missed that, but I missed it. And I remember thinking it didn't really make any sense. And so I went and signed up for an interview anyway. And, and I just remember meeting with someone who's probably a student affairs professional. And the very first question out of their mouth was, you do know that this is a, we do not select juniors and seniors. And I said, I heard that. Doesn't make sense to me. Could you tell me why? And I remember the person really couldn't explain why. They kept focusing on, the maturity of the student. And I think my response was, I don't know if a year in college is any way connected to your maturity. And that was the end of the interview. And I was sure I wasn't going to get it, but I did. And as a sophomore, I was probably one of the first orientation counselors who's a sophomore. And so after that, every year I did orientation. And I loved it. I think maybe my junior year, I applied to be an RA and was a resident assistant. And then I remember on a very crisp fall afternoon, after taking my undergrad was political science. And so after taking the LSAT and realizing that the LSAT and realizing I wasn't going to go to law school, I wasn't going. And I remember being pretty dejected around that, and walking back to my hall director, Francine Bruce, who I'll never forget. I remember sitting in her office and saying, well, I'm not going to law school. So I need to probably have a plan B, because I've never had a plan B. I just thought that was what I was going to do. And Francine said, well, what do you like doing now? And I said, well, what classes do you like? What do you like? I said, well, I mean, my classes are okay. I mean, I really enjoyed, my political science classes, but I really sort of enjoy the things I'm doing on campus. Because I was an RA and then orientation. And then also too, I ran at NC State, there was a position you could be on the judicial board to sort of adjudicate cases of student conduct. And so they had a student board, but it was elected. And so I was on that board, which kind of connected with my political science aspirations. So I thought, that would be good. And Francine said, well, have you ever thought about the profession of student affairs? And I said, there's a profession of student affairs? And she said, yes, there is. And so we started talking about it a little bit. And I then realized that, this is something I may want to do. And I applied for a couple of programs and was able to attend Indiana University. And it was amazing. It was a wonderful experience, and was able to also do an Akuho internship between my first and second year, where I went to UC Berkeley. So got a sense for a totally different campus and environment. I'd never been anywhere further than the East Coast until I went to Indiana and then to Berkeley. Then when I graduated, I worked at UNC Chapel Hill, University of North Carolina, Charlotte first, and then UNC Chapel Hill, and then University of Georgia, all in university housing, from hall director to associate director of housing at Georgia. Really loved my time in housing for 14 years, but then knew I wanted to do something different, and decided to pretty much leave Georgia. And when I got an invitation to do semester at sea, and I decided to, just do it, because I knew that, I wouldn't have a job when I got back, but I said, this is an experience that I need to do. So did semester at sea around the world for 100 days, countries. It was an amazing experience. I was on the student life staff, and it made me focus and decide that when I got back, I wanted to apply for positions that were in the Dean of Students office, and was able to get the Assistant Dean of Students and Director of Student Activities position at Iowa State University, where I was for 7 years, and really had a wonderful time, great position. During that time too, my colleagues, Jamie Washington, Kathy O'Bear, and Mark Cullen and I started the Social Justice Training Institute in 1998 in a way to sort of give back to profession. That was a time when there wasn't a lot out there in terms of allowing people to be prepared to be better leaders on their campus around issues of social justice. And so it was all about personal work, getting folks really to think about who they are in terms of their identities. And so that was going on. And after 7 years at Iowa State, I knew that I wanted to do something else, and decided to do some full-time consulting, moved to Washington, D.C., did that for a couple of years. And then, to be honest, that was when the economy decided to take a turn, and being independently employed as a consultant was probably not the wisest thing to be doing, and living in Washington, D.C. during that time. And so a position opened up at ACPA, where it was working with conferences and educational programs and meetings. And my place is probably about 6 blocks from the ACPA International office. And I said, you know what? I think this could be something I'd be interested in. The person who was leaving was someone I knew really well, and she met with me, and I applied, and then worked at ACPA in an international office for 5 years, which association work is different. I mean, it's much more policy and much more corporate than people realized. And after 5 years at Iowa State, I was offered an opportunity to work at Leadership, which is a nonprofit that works with college and university students around leading with integrity. And I'd already done some work with Leadership in the past. And so what a great opportunity to work on staff. And so now currently, that's what I'm doing, along with my consulting, and continuing to connect with the Social Justice Training Institute when I can. So that's my journey.
Yes, that is quite a journey, Vernon.
In your 30+ years of experience, how have you seen the profession of student affairs prepare and transition to serve a more diverse population on campus?
What's interesting is that, and I tell this all the time, is that we in student affairs have pretty much been on the forefront of any major social issue. And then the rest of the university campus starts to care. But it's usually the student affairs professionals that are really and truly the ones that make that first connection, because we're so connected to students. I mean, I think that it makes sense that sometimes faculty and administrators on a college campus aren't the first to really understand the narratives that are happening on campus. It's usually us, because they're in our residence halls, they're in our clubs and organizations. We see and hear students differently because of that. And so as a result, I mean, if you think of any major issue that has hit Time or Newsweek over the last 50 years, we talked about it in student affairs first, whether it be date and acquaintance rape, whether it be racism, whether it be homophobia and heterosexism, whether it be gender equity, whether it be about gender identity and trans issues. Just go down the list of things that now are in the public conversation. We were talking about them in higher education, specifically in student affairs first. And so much of it was sort of a trial and error around trying to get a sense for, so how do we engage this? And I believe that initially the conversation on a college campus was around numbers. You know, we need to get students of color on campus and we want them to stay. So we need to provide programs for them. We need to provide services for them. And it was always about the other at the beginning. And I think sometimes it tends to move in that direction even today. But what I see as a shift is we now understand more and more that in order for us to engage the other, we first have to understand who we are in the conversation. And that's a huge shift, because I think we have moved to a place, and we're still kind of kicking and screaming and struggling a little bit, but I can see this move now to people understanding that it's not only about services and programs for students from marginalized groups, it's also about us making sure that we know who we are in the conversation so that we can engage people in different ways and in ways that really empower folks. It's more about liberation and thinking about what would the world look like if we did have equity, if we did have this conversation that really included all. So that's the big shift I've seen in terms of, how can we continue to move away from only talking about the other and seeing and sort of otherness centered, and that it be more about a collective community. And I'm a part of it too, even though my identity may be a privileged identity, I'm a part of this community too, and what's my responsibility?
How can students and student affairs professionals do more to create a more inclusive environment on campus? And how can students be empowered through the programming to speak up and out about negative racial discourse towards people of color?
Well, I think there's three things that quickly come to mind. The first thing is our own personal work. I think that we as student affairs professionals need to continue to do our own personal work around our marginalized and our privileged identities to see where we may have some areas in us that we may be unintentionally marginalizing students. And so that's the first thing. It's a continual, what can we do in order to be better in terms of noticing patterns around identity and just being, strong, using what I call ally behavior. I don't use the term ally as a label. I use it as an action, or I always say it's a verb or an adjective, not a noun. And what are we doing in that space? So that's the first thing, just our personal work that we can do. I think the second thing is to not leave students who are in privileged identities out of this conversation. Because typically when we focus on race and racism, we focus on the marginalized identity. But it is extremely important that we work with white students and be role models for white students, and have white students be role models for other students. And I think that's what I've noticed that's been powerful over the years are white students who come on campus and really understand, well, wait a minute, I'm a part of this. I've got to do some work. And then they coach other white students because it shouldn't be only students of color who are constantly educating students from privileged groups, specifically white students. It's got to be white students on white students. We got to do that. And so, I think that's something that we continue to stumble on. It's like the narrative moves quickly to making sure that students of color are the ones that are leading the narrative. And no, it doesn't. It needs to be both. Then the third thing I believe is to make sure that we provide opportunities for students in their structured spaces to have those conversations. Students of color in clubs and organizations, in classrooms, to be able to say, so this has been my story. This has been my experience. And for many students, it's different. For some students, they may feel very comfortable going to a town hall and having a conversation. But for most students, I believe they really want to talk one-on-one with folks, give people an opportunity. So for me, it's about building relationships. I'm not, as a student of color, going to talk to you just because you're in a position. I'm going to talk to you because with you. And so what can we do in order to build relationships with students of color so that they do feel connected in a way to say, this has been my experience.
What type of advice do you have for new student affairs professionals who are trying to create safe spaces for students of color at predominantly white institutions?
For me, it is about I go back to the building relationships piece. Is what can we do as we're interacting with students, as we're engaging with them, to just have conversations and build those relationships where they can feel comfortable connecting. I do believe that the variety of things that we can offer for students to enter, for some students, it could be a program that is connected to their ethnic identity or their racial identity. For others, it may be something that is more connected to something that they're passionate about in terms of sports or in terms of entertainment. I think that, some of the best programmatic pieces I've seen have been through using social media and, using YouTube clips. And there's some folks that are out there that are doing some great work in terms of that students know about. And then maybe those, what I call YouTube celebrities, are the ones that can come in and engage the conversation. I really believe, there's some campuses that are still doing things that they did in 1992 to engage students. And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. Stop with that program. Wonderful that it's I know there's a historical place sometimes, and there's legacy and there's, tradition. But, if that, Black History Month banquet that you've been doing for 25 years isn't working and attendance is dropping, then you probably need to rethink it. And so I really think that that's where we need to be in terms of providing creative opportunities for students to engage, and just go with it. I mean, that's what I think is great about folks that are entering the profession as new professionals, is the excitement and the the newness, and the ingenuity that can be brought in, I think is really helpful. And when I go to conferences, and I notice the programming that is happening, it's usually some of the new professionals that are coming in that are really pushing our profession to kind of look at different ways in order to engage students and make sure that we provide not only one narrative or one way to enter, because students are coming from multiple identities. So what can we do in order to find a space where, because students now are saying, well, you know what? Yes, I may have a racial identity that I'm connected to, but I'm also all of these too. So what can we do in order to do sort of the intersecting multiple identities?
Can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing now, and possibly give us a little taste of what you'll be speaking about at the Dalton Institute?
Well, currently, I'm working at Leadership, which is a wonderful experience. We actually have 3 programs now. Most people know about the Institute, which is a 6-day immersion experience where students really and truly kind of dig deep and have great conversations about who they are in the world and leave with visions to change the world. And it's always a powerful experience. And we have over 90 campuses that host a 1-week, 6-day experience. So that's pretty powerful to know that that many students are participating in that every year. Then we have Catalyst, which is our 1-day program, which is a great opportunity for students to just get in a space and engage and thinking about their authentic path. And we've actually just added a new program called Resilience, which is for professionals. So for student affairs staff, for faculty, for corporate and nonprofit folks, it's a day of looking at, so what is resiliency? How can we in tough times continue to be our best? And so my role at Leadership is I always say, I don't like to say I'm the salesperson for Leadership, but I'm more the first contact person. I'm like, if you have any questions about any of our programs, I'm the first person that you talk to then decide if we're a good fit for you. So that's been really good. I live in Washington, D.C. I work remotely, but I am in Champaign, Illinois, where Leadership is based once a month. But what I do, I don't have to move, which is great because D.C. is a pretty amazing place to live. And also continue to do my consulting and speaking. And as much as I can, be involved with the Social Justice Training Institute. We're in the process now of doing some onboarding of new faculty, because Kathy, Jamie, and Becky Martinez is our other faculty member for now. And we're sort of onboarding alums to take our places because we're not going to be around forever. We also, along with the 2 professional SJTIs that we host every year, we host one in December and then one in June. We host an undergraduate student SJTI every year in July, and Carmen Rivera and Sam Offer are the faculty for that. So our goal now is we've been doing this since 1998. We have so many alums out there that we're trying to provide opportunities for them to sort of move on up, and we can step back because we're pretty excited about the curriculum that we have, and it's tried and true, and it allows people to sort of dig deep and unpack their identities and hopefully be better people in the world. So that's what I'm doing now.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then you wanted a taste of what I'm doing at the Dalton Institute. Well, it's interesting. My newest the keynote that I'm doing now more and more is more of a discussion. Actually, it's around sort of my reflections on things that we need to be aware of as we're entering into this generation of social justice issues. And I always jokingly say that I initially wanted to title the keynote "Stupid Things We're Doing Around the Concepts of Social Justice in the Name of Social Justice." That's really pissing me off. Because there's a lot of stuff out there that people are doing that are just doesn't make any sense to me, and in the name of social justice. So it's not going to be a finger wagging keynote, but it is going to be so these are some things I want you to consider as you're continuing to navigate the campus community and be supportive of all students. And then I'm just going to kind of share a few of those, and then I'm just going to have people sort of reflect on them and give feedback and give their thoughts. because I believe that it should be more of a conversation, especially around social justice, because I'm not the all-knowing around anything around social justice. I feel that I have some knowledge, and I've done some research, and I've got some good skills that I continue to grow and learn. But every day of my life, something happens where I go, yep, there's either a message I need to unlearn, or there's something that I've learned from another person, or around identities and who people are in the world. And that's what it excites me to continue to learn and grow around these issues. And so my goal is to just kind of put some things out there for people to reflect on, and then together we can kind of, you know, dissect it and see, you know, how it applies to folks in the field and in the profession and on campus. So that's the goal.